"Leela, hang on!" Mike shouted. It was the last thing she remembered from that terrible accident. At the time, she was a hopeful fourth-year student and expecting a child. A massive traffic accident on the bridge 10 years ago took the lives of 7 people, including Leela's unborn child. She was saved by doctors who fought for her life for 5 hours. "Well, you held up well," an elderly doctor said, sitting on a chair near Leela's bed. "You will live, but you might not have any more children due to the extensive damage. Everything will heal, but the question is how. Nevertheless, you're very lucky. I think fate should give you a special lottery ticket for such a bad accident." The day was etched in Leela's memory forever. The doctor's words came true. Years later, she became the wife of a businessman. People often say that it is wives who shape their husbands into who they are. These women are admired, but few consider the cost of becoming the partners of successful men. Rising from the bottom is not an easy path, as it requires sacrificing the quiet life. Leela went through the same experience. She dropped out of her college against the protests of the teachers and immersed herself in her husband's business. Mike was building a small business for the production of furniture. "Why are you sacrificing your life and career?" Leela's friends asked. "What's the point of putting all your eggs in one basket? How is Mike better than you? You're on track to graduate with honours. Let him think about providing for you while you continue to study." "I understand all your concerns and arguments, girls," Leela reassured her worried friends. "It was his idea to start the furniture company, so I have to compromise." "What if he becomes rich and leaves you, like most successful men do?" her friends insisted. "Oh, come on. He loves me and would never do that," Leela replied with a smile, already thinking about the delicious meal she would cook for her beloved Mike. Seeing that Leela didn't need their advice, her friends washed their hands of the situation and anxiously watched as she sacrificed her life for a man. Even Leela's parents were unhappy with her decision. Her father, in particular, wanted to see his daughter independent and successful. However, Leela was too happy and inspired by her husband's dream to take seriously the concerns of her loved ones. As for Mike, he didn't care about the disapproving glances from Leela's acquaintances at all. He was totally immersed in his business. At first, he and his friend designed and assembled furniture in his garage. Slowly, they gained customers. Throughout it all, Leela was by his side, creating the real environment for creativity and career growth. Leela guided her husband through the challenges, set up partnerships, and built a client base. She was the driving force behind the rapidly growing furniture company, which could compete with major manufacturers within a couple of years. Customers trusted the quality of their products, and the range of furniture fulfilled every taste and budget, pleasing those with limited income. However, there was one thing that marred their otherwise blissful life: the absence of children. "Your tests are normal, and there are no issues on your side," the doctor said at the next appointment. "It seems to be a psychological problem." "Why can't I get pregnant?" Leela asked. "It's all in your head," replied the doctor. "When you're calm and content, anything is possible." "But I am calm and I am content." Leela took offence at the doctor's words. "Are you sure?" the doctor asked quietly. She remained silent. Deep down, she knew the doctor was right. After all, she had worked as a women's doctor for decades and had learned to understand the psychology of his patients. "Well, what did the doctor say? When are you going to give us grandchildren? Your father is ill. Who knows how long he has left? He'd like to spend some time with his grandchildren before he dies." "Mum, don't say that," Leela reassured her. "Daddy will be all right, and I'll have time to give birth. You'll get the chance to complain about my kids' naughty behaviour." "Oh, I wish I could see the babies soon," sighed the mother. Leela's father died 3 months after that conversation. Grief-stricken, the mother didn't live a year after his death. So Leela was left alone, and apart from Mike, there were no other relatives. She sold her parents' apartment to invest the money in her husband's business. As the number of customers grew, the company's capacity needed to be increased. All possible loans had already been taken, and the banks were no longer willing to take the risk and provide the large loan Mike had hoped for. And then they faced an even bigger financial problem. "I told you not to buy those bonds. It was too suspicious," said Leela, when Mike complained about losing the money he had invested. "Well, a blind man could see it was a scam. Why didn't you listen to me?" "Oh, are you the only one who's so smart here?" exclaimed the husband. "I'm the owner of the company, and I decide where to invest." "I thought we were both the owners," Leela said, surprised. "But that's not the point now. We have to save money. Where's the rest of the money you withdrew?" "I invested in cryptocurrency. A colleague advised me," Mike replied. "You're crazy," Leela clutched her head. "It's dangerous to trust anyone. But why didn't you tell me what was going on?" "Calm down, eh?" Mike waved his hand and went to work. From that day on, their relationship began to strain. Or maybe they had been like that before. But Leela, immersed in the care of her husband and his worries, did not notice it. "Is this Leela?" A confident male voice interrupted her troubled thoughts. "This is your father's lawyer calling, Mr. Marshall. May I see you? It's about your inheritance." "Yes." Leela was surprised by the strange call, for she had received the inheritance from her parents 6 months ago. "Let's meet in an hour at the Cherry Cafe." Leela sat at a table in a familiar place from her childhood, where she used to go with her parents as a little girl. An elderly man in an austere suit and a leather briefcase in his hands approached her. "Are you Leela?" he asked. "But that's an unnecessary question. You look so much like your daddy." "Have you known my father?" Leela wondered. "Like the back of my hand," smiled the lawyer. "He trusted me completely. I'm retiring now, but I have one more thing to complete. To discuss your father's will with you." "Haven't I got everything?" she wondered. "No, since I am here now," replied Mr. Marshall. "Your father managed his money, which he accumulated by playing the stock market, quite cleverly. He knew that in a fit of emotion you would give everything to your husband. And your father didn't trust Mike, as you know. He predicted that you'd be left with nothing, no means of livelihood, no parents' apartment. And the apartment has already been sold, right?" "Yes," Leela said, dumbfounded. She was shocked that her dad had thought it out all so carefully, and even after his death wanted to help his daughter. "Here is the account that is yours alone. You can only spend this money on yourself or your own company, which will be registered in your name only. I was appointed by your father to oversee the spending of the money, and believe me, not a single dime will be spent on your husband and his business." "But this furniture firm is our family business," Leela exclaimed. "How can I spend the money only on myself?" "You should," smiled Mr. Marshall. "You'll understand someday. As far as I know, the firm was registered under Mike, and it was before your wedding." "Why?" "I trusted him," answered Leela stubbornly. "But your father didn't," said the lawyer gently. "Here's a bank card. According to your father's will, you'll be receiving a certain amount of money on it every month. It's the interest that's accrued from the deposit, so that you don't have to depend on your spouse. And this is the amount of money in the main account," said the lawyer, who wrote down a sum with many zeros. When Leah saw the amount of money her father had left her, she was confused. "Well, how? How could he earn so much? It's impossible. He and Mum lived an ordinary life," she exclaimed, splashing her hands in frustration. "Who do you think you got your talent for finances from? Plus, he had a faithful and pragmatic friend like me," Mr. Marshall smiled. "Thank you," Leela said, hugging the elderly man like a father. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she cried. "I miss him and Mum so much." Me too, my girl, me too, the lawyer replied, bidding farewell and heading home. Leela flew home as if on wings. She wanted to share the news of her newfound wealth with her husband. However, to her surprise, he didn't seem enthusiastic. "Your money is none of my concern," her husband replied dryly. "This lawyer and your daddy, they thought me worthless. He didn't show me any respect. He sat on the money, while I and you were bumping like a fly in the closed window. Good idea, father." "Don't talk about my father like that," Leela reassured him. "My parents have helped us a lot. I gave my all to your dream and we made it. Now you have your own company. What else can you dream of?" "Who asked you to give your all to our business?" Mike suddenly retorted, causing Leela's eyes to well up with resentment. "I have a dream, a son and a daughter which you can't give me." The last statement struck Leela deeply, as if a red-hot knife had pierced her heart. She hadn't expected such cruelty from her husband. "But you know I can't have children because of that accident. And you had something to do with it as well, don't you remember? It was a miracle that you got away with it. They blamed the truck driver." "What's done is done," Mike replied, preparing to leave. "Where are you going? It's evening," Leela asked. "I'm going to the office. I have too much work to do, because I don't have a rich father who could give me money," Mike replied curtly, slamming the door behind him. Apparently, he couldn't forgive his wife for not being able to provide him with access to the money. As the evening grew late, Mike still hadn't returned home. Panic started to set in the woman's soul, but then Leela heard the key turn in the lock, and Mike entered the hallway. He was tipsy, something he had never allowed himself to do before on a weeknight. "Where have you been for so long?" Leela asked anxiously. "Where I've been, I'm not there any more." Mike laughed drunkenly and went to sleep on the sofa without even taking off his shoes. Leela attributed Mike's behaviour to his upset about her father's inheritance and his lack of trust to Mike from the beginning. Therefore, she forgave this prank to her husband. As Leela undressed the sleeping Mike to put him to bed, she caught a subtle scent of women's perfume. Dismissing it as the scent of alcohol, she didn't pay much attention. Mike, Leela sighed. "What a child you are," she said, stroking his head. "Courtney, my girl, Sonny, daughter," Mike mumbled incoherently in his sleep. Leela froze in surprise. "My poor Mike," she thought. "He's delirious about having children, and I can't give him any. He's already named his daughter Courtney in his dreams." And Leela wept bitterly, trying to stifle her sobs so as not to wake her drunk husband. In the morning, Mike was in high spirits, which couldn't be said for Leela. "Why are you so strange?" Mike asked, as if nothing had happened, while his wife prepared breakfast. "You look like you spent the entire night at a sports bar cheering for your favourite team." "If only," Leela replied sleepily. "Someone came home drunk from work last night. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" "Why can't I have a drink with an old friend? We haven't seen each other in a long time," Mike retorted, taking offence. "A friend?" Leela inquired. "Is this an interrogation?" Mike suddenly exploded, causing Leela to shudder in fright. "I'll eat at work. At least there's no interrogation." And with that Mike walked away, leaving Leela standing bewildered in the middle of the kitchen. In the afternoon, Leela decided to go to the store, which was not far from her husband's office. She wanted to please him with a sumptuous dinner and mend the rough edges that were appearing more frequently in their relationship. "Leela, it's good to see you." Carol, Mike's secretary, who had been with their company since its inception, rushed to meet her. "Hi, Carol. Why don't you come in to see us?" Leela asked. "I think Mike won't be happy to see me," she said in a conspiratorial wink. Leela found Carol's words strange. "Why are you walking around in the middle of the working day? Did you go for gingerbread and coffee?" Leela joked. "No, I resigned from my job a couple of months ago." said Carol. Why? Leela stood in surprise. Was the salary not satisfactory? We could raise it. There's another reason. Let's just say it has a moral background, she answered evasively. And who's in your place now? Mike didn't say anything. That's strange. There's a new secretary. Her name is Courtney. Carol replied, blushing. And I found another job. I'm getting used to it. I wanted to ask you, did you have a family celebration yesterday? I saw Mike buying a gorgeous bouquet of flowers and a huge teddy bear. No, he was at work late last night and then came home drunk, Leela replied. Are you sure? Carol asked softly and, saying goodbye, went on her way. This strange conversation had gotten into Leela's soul and would not let her relax. Dinner was ready, but she was not as glad as she had been in the morning. Vague doubts tormented her. Leela was afraid to directly ask where her husband had been last night and with whom. What if her suspicions were groundless, and Carol was only seeking revenge on Mike for her dismissal? Dinner was on the table, but Mike still hadn't arrived. He showed up on the doorstep 2 hours later. Leela had to reheat the roast. She put on a smile to hide her worries. Lots of work? Leela asked sympathetically, helping her husband take off his jacket. Her nose detected the familiar scent of expensive French perfume. It was a woman's perfume. After inspecting his shirt for traces of lipstick and finding nothing, Leela calmed down, thinking that she was just overthinking things. Yes, there's a lot of work, Mike said. I was discussing the company's development strategy for next year. You know, I'm so tired. I'll grab a quick bite and go to bed. Okay. But I've been preparing all day. I've been at the stove for 3 hours, Leela said, unable to keep her upset. Let's spend some time together like we used to. Remember? We'll sit, we'll talk, we'll laugh, we'll reminisce. Leela, I'm not desiring to laugh right now. Mike cut her off. We need to increase production, and that requires money. I told you, I'm tired. Can't you hear me? It's true what they say, women become dumb when they become housewives. Leela didn't expect such rudeness from her husband and decided not to continue the argument with him. Dinner passed in silence. The ticking clock seemed to measure the time until the end of the family dinner. Leela occasionally went into the kitchen to wipe away her tears. Soon Mike got up, thanked her for dinner, and left the dining room without even kissing her, as he usually did. Prickly suspicions began to take root in Leela's soul. Why did Carol stop visiting us? Why didn't my father trust Mike? Who was involved in Carol's dismissal? These questions swarmed in Leela's mind without answers. She was going to find out the whole truth, certainly. However, a few days later, she felt sick and weak. Her rare pulse and semi-fainting led her to a hospital bed. It's strange, the young doctor said to Leela. All your tests came back fine, but your condition is not good. It seems like you have symptoms of toxic poisoning and a heart attack combined. But the blood tests would show that, and they're perfect. I don't understand. Am I going to live? Leela asked quietly. You will, of course, but we need to know the reason for such a sudden fainting and weakness. What did you eat yesterday? Dr. Lithgow asked. Nothing much. A roast and a glass of red wine, replied Leela. I'm quite confused then. If you think I'm inexperienced, you can change your attending physician, the doctor said grimly. No, I'm fine with you. Perhaps it's the effects of an old injury from the accident, Leela assured the doctor. I don't think so, he said, but everything could be. I'll schedule an MRI and then we'll see. However, the MRI revealed no abnormalities in Leela. The doctors were at a loss, but they helped her recover. Leela was taken from the hospital by her friend. Mike didn't find time to assist his wife and didn't visit her during the 5 days she was undergoing examinations. This greatly offended Leela, and she decided to confirm whether her father was right about her husband. As she entered the house, she felt a sense of emptiness. The refrigerator was empty, and expensive champagne bottles were in the trash can. "And what were you celebrating so cheerfully while I was in the hospital, dear husband?" Leela asked aloud, facing Mike's picture on the mantelpiece. "It's time to expose you." "Just wait, hubby. You've never been intelligent, honey." Leela took a pen and a piece of paper, finally figuring out what she needed to do. Being skilled with technology, Leela had no trouble setting up a hidden camera in the niche of the fireplace, opposite the antique chest of drawers that her father had given her as a gift. She placed the important piece of paper in a folder, which she then hid in the top drawer of the dresser and locked with a key. She looked at the small silver key. "Daddy, thank you for this gift." Leela mentally expressed her gratitude to her father. "I think it will help me in this difficult situation. Now, I just have to wait for Mike. God give me strength." To make time pass more quickly, Leela decided to cook dinner for two, within the limits of her health. While the courier delivered the groceries, she went to the bedroom to choose an outfit for dinner. She wanted to look her best. Leela applied her favourite cream to her face and neck, enjoying its pleasant fragrance. However, she encountered a problem. All her dresses hung on her like hangers. She had lost a significant amount of weight. Looking in the mirror, she saw her sunken cheeks, black eyes that aged her, and thinning, dull hair. Leela also didn't feel well. She was constantly thirsty, even after drinking all the water from the carafe in the kitchen. The groceries arrived quickly, but preparing dinner turned out to be a challenge. Leela had to take breaks frequently, as her hands trembled with weakness, and she longed to lie down and rest. She remembered her beautiful pearl earrings and wanted to wear them, but they were not in their usual place. At that moment, the front door slammed open, and Mike entered the kitchen. "Leela, are you home?" "Yeah, I'm here," she replied, coming out into the hallway. "Dinner is on the table. Wash your hands and join me." "How are you feeling? You don't look well." Mike looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. "I'm so-so," she replied. "Have you seen my pearl earrings? I can't find them. It's strange." "No," Mike replied briefly. During dinner, Leela told her husband, "Listen, something strange has been happening to me lately. I don't know how much time I have left to live." Leela noticed how intently her husband listened to her. "That's why I've made a will, but I have one condition." "What?" Mike exhaled. "The will is in my dresser. You must only open it after I pass away. Here's the key. Will you promise me?" Leela handed her husband the precious key. "Certainly," he answered quickly, but hesitating before adding, "Well, I hope that won't happen." The trap was set. Leela had opened it. If Mike discovered the will before the specified time, it would mean that all he wanted from her was money. Leela anxiously watched to see if Mike would approach the dresser. She had installed a special app on her phone. 3 days passed, but Mike didn't come near it. Leela began to feel a sense of relief. They resumed having dinners together, which helped calm her down. However, the mysterious illness resurfaced. Leela's condition deteriorated rapidly, and she was transported by ambulance back to the same hospital again. When Leela regained consciousness, Dr. Lithgow and an unfamiliar man were standing in front of her, engaged in a heated argument. "Oh, come on, Travis, what nonsense!" exclaimed Dr. Lithgow. "You're talking nonsense. You're a medic." "I've seen patients like her before," Travis whispered. "It's not good if you don't help them in time. Why don't I get her our granny, who was a talented herbalist?" "Oh, come on. Bring me more shaman. Let him dance with a tambourine arrangement. Maybe we can use witchcraft to get a new ultrasound machine at the same time," Dr. Lithgow snapped. "This is a hospital, not a forest village. So don't bother our granny. She's not young, and she has a high blood pressure." "Doctor," Leela whispered, "what shamans are you talking about?" "Oh, you're awake. That's good." Dr. Lithgow leaned over Leela and checked her pulse. "Your heart is racing. I don't understand anything." "My brother is joking. He's talking nonsense. Rest now, and I'll check on you later." And Leela was left alone in the room. This time, Mike had splurged and chosen the best ward for his wife, apparently to apologise for the last time when he had left Leela here alone. Between the procedures, she took out her phone and started watching the space where the dresser stood. She was afraid she would miss the moment when Mike opened the drawer. But nothing happened for a while, so Leela just observed her surroundings and thought she was wrong in her suspicions. However, her patience was rewarded. Leela clearly saw Mike walk over to the dresser and take the key out of his jacket. Suddenly, he looked around and smiled, welcoming, as if he had seen something beautiful. A young woman with Leela's pearl earrings in her ears approached him. "How could you?" Leela exclaimed, and her heart clenched. Her cry was not heard by the person it was intended for, but she heard perfectly what they were saying. "Courtney, I hope there will be good news for us," Mike softly said, which caused Leela's heartache. "Open it now, darling," Courtney demanded. "Actually, I was supposed to do it after my wife's death only, but for you, I'm ready for anything." Mike smiled. Voila! He skillfully pulled out the folder with the will. With hands trembling with greed, he opened the folder. A completely blank sheet lay before him. "I don't understand that stupid humour," Mike shouted and threw the sheet on the floor. "What is this? Where is the will? What does it mean?" "It seems like you've been tricked," Courtney grudgingly said. "How could you let her do that? You said you had it all worked out." "She knew I would open the will beforehand, so she suspected me," Mike concluded. "I can't stand her anymore. I'm sick of her." "Calm down," said Courtney. "You're scaring me, and it's not good to worry." Suddenly a sharp pain pierced her entire body, and Leela lost consciousness. "You frightened us," the male nurse said while giving her an IV. "It's good that you're awake." "Get Mr. Marshall, my lawyer. Here's the phone," Leela said, not even having the strength to hold the receiver. "Okay, I'll do it," the man said. Mr. Marshall arrived quickly. Leela told him everything, hiding nothing. He was concerned about her condition. "Leela, why didn't you tell me anything?" he said reproachfully. "You are on the edge. You have problems in your personal life, and not only that, you are seriously ill." "I didn't want to inconvenience anyone. I'm sorry," Leela replied quietly, her strength leaving her. "Dear Mr. Marshall, I ask for your help. Make a will in my name. All the money I received from my father after his death, I want to leave it to the Children's Fund. They will distribute it fairly. I didn't have children of my own, so at least I will help other people's children." "All right, I'll do whatever you ask," the man replied with trembling lips. "Are you sure you won't leave anything to your spouse?" "I will," said Leela. "I'll bequeath him my old dresser." Mr. Marshall couldn't resist laughing. "Even in such a situation you can make a joke. That's why your father adored you, and I understand him." When the lawyer had left, Leela thought for a moment. She used to worry only about her husband's well-being. And what did she get in return? There is no family, no children, and no faith in the future. That's what was left of their marriage. Even in his dreams, Mike talked about Courtney. A naive Leela thought he was dreaming of a daughter. Now, all she had ahead of her was an unexplained illness and emptiness. Tears of resentment flowed from her eyes as she reflected on her life, which had been devoted solely to one man. She had missed her parents' illnesses and deaths because she was consumed with worry about Mike's business and caring for him. In their time of need, she hadn't been there for them, and now she found herself completely alone. The realization of her own loneliness crushed Leela even further. She became discouraged and found herself unable to get out of bed at the end of the day. "Hey, why are you so sour?" Travis, the same male nurse, sat next to the sobbing Leela holding a tray. "Come on, let's have some chicken soup." I don't want to, Leela said quietly. Let me die in peace. Not on my watch, Travis exclaimed. You need to eat. All right, if you don't want to eat, then drink. When he saw Leela looking at him with surprise and confusion, he corrected himself. I mean, have some chicken broth. Travis artistically shook the cup, but his clumsiness caused the soup to splash onto the floor. Leela involuntarily laughed, but it was silent laughter, as if the strength of the recently energetic woman somewhere also poured out like this soup. Travis seized the moment and managed to pour a few spoonfuls of warm broth into Leela. Immediately she felt better and smiled. Thank you, she said. You're welcome, Travis smiled. It's my job and calling to help people. But I've had an eye on you for a long time. What's the matter? How did you end up like this? I think there's something wrong, and even though my brother is against it, I still want to offer you a solution. What is it? Leela wondered. To escape from here, Travis whispered. They won't heal you here. They don't know what they're doing. I have nowhere to go, she said quietly, tears streaming down her face. I'll take you to my grandmother. She's a healer and herbalist. She used to work wonders, but now she's old and doesn't practice anymore. But she'll help you for me, Travis assured her. Why do you want to help me? Leela asked. To be honest, I don't even know myself. There's something about you that has caught my attention. He shrugged. Well, do you agree? Time is working against you. Write a note saying that you're leaving the hospital voluntarily, or they'll call the police, and I'll be in trouble. All right, Leela replied briefly. She had nothing to lose. Late that night, at the agreed hour, Travis brought her some clothes. Leela changed into them. He lifted Leela, who was thin and light as a feather, into his arms and carried her out of the hospital unnoticed. They took a cab to Grandma Evelyn's house. The village where she lived was not far from the city. The house was covered in ivy, and fragrant herbs grew all around. Evelyn was sitting on a bench when she saw her grandson carrying Leela out of the car. She came over to help him. When Leela was brought into the house, she was laid on a high bed with a feather mattress. Evelyn gave her a medical decoction to drink, accompanied by prayers and incantations. Leela suddenly felt enveloped in a pleasant and relaxing slumber. Sleep, my dear, sleep, she said, hearing the elderly woman's soothing voice through her sleep. Leela slept for nearly 24 hours. She was awakened by the aroma of freshly baked goods and food. She felt a wild hunger, which seemed strange to her. She could feel her strength returning. Good morning. What did you give me to drink? Leela asked. It's a decoction made from the nettles gathered under the full moon, along with prayers to all the saints, Evelyn explained simply. It removes the evil that has been done to you, and there was a lot of it in you. I had to change your shirt 3 times. Leela examined herself. Indeed, she was lying in a long linen shirt, carefully embroidered by someone's caring hands. Thank you, she said quietly. There's no need to thank me. You should thank my grandson instead. A couple more days and you would have died in vain. And they fed you, my dear, with yellow toad poison. That's the kind of thing you find in our swampy marshes. No analysis would have detected the cause of the poisoning, and this poison weakens a person, taking away their strength and life, exclaimed the herbalist. But never mind. Now, I'm going to heat up the bath and cleanse you of any remnants of someone else's anger. And I've also made it so that your assailant will come to you, having found themselves. But who would do this to me? I've never hurt anyone, Leela exclaimed in amazement. You don't have to hurt people. Sometimes it's just enough to live well, sighed Evelyn. That's why people can get mad or envious. And you were poisoned by someone close to you. They put poison in your face cream. Your face and neck were the most yellow and sweaty. But there's still a lot of it inside you. Oh, Evelyn, help me, please, pleaded Leela. I'll give you as much money as you want. I don't need your money. I'm doing this for my grandson, Evelyn said with a smile. He must have taken a liking to you, and he's a good man. Leela's strength was gradually returning. By evening, she was able to get out of bed and move around. After a bath, where Evelyn performed a purification ritual, Leela began to feel better than before, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. When Travis arrived home after work, he was surprised to find Leela and his granny making dumplings together. "Wow!" he exclaimed. "Grandma, you've outdone yourself. Leela looked so sick. How did this happen? I'm so glad." "It was a professional job," Grandma joked, "but seriously, grandson, you brought Leela here just in time. By the way, how's your brother doing? Is he angry?" "Well, he's good," Travis grinned. "He left me without a bonus, saying it was for self-rule." "We'll have to give him a bath too to wash away his pride," grumbled Grandma. The next 3 days passed peacefully and tranquilly for Leela. She had never felt better. She enjoyed being in the village, the clean air, delicious food, the closeness to nature, and the simplicity and openness of the people. She decided to stay, much to the delight of Evelyn and Travis. The healer had been in need of a successor for a long time, and Travis had developed strong feelings for the beautiful and gentle Leela. But this idyllic period was interrupted by a visit from Leela's past life. Mike showed up, clearly not expecting to see Leela in good health, and he was unpleasantly surprised. "Well, hello," he said sarcastically. "So this is where you've been hiding. The hospital told me you had run away. How could you do that? You could have died without treatment." "Hello," Leela said. "And who, I wonder, is to blame for my illness? Do you happen to know? I have every right to leave anywhere, but poisoning someone is a serious crime." Mike turned pale. "What poison? I know nothing about it," Mike cried. "And you don't know anything about your mistress Courtney either, right?" Leela asked, no longer caring about her husband's infidelity. She realized she no longer loved him. "I have no mistress," Mike shouted, his face turning red. "But the camera footage says otherwise," Leela grinned. "Did you like my will? By the way, I filed for divorce. My lawyer will be in touch." "I'm glad to hear. I've wanted to divorce you for a long time," Mike yelled. "I'm sick of you. I own the whole business, including your house. You signed the deed of gift without looking." "Yes, my father was right about you, and I'm grateful for his help," Leela grinned. "I'm sorry about your Courtney. I think she'll meet the same fate as me. Now get out. This house is too clean for your kind." And Mike left, slamming the door loudly. Leela could no longer hold back her tears and sobbed. Evelyn rushed to comfort her. "Don't be sad, my dear. You're still young and will start living again. God willing, everything will work out for you." She stroked Leela's head. "Look at how Travis looks at you. He can't take his eyes off you." "I think it's mutual," Leela confessed to the elderly woman. "Well, go and tell him," Evelyn smiled, "because he's tormented by his feelings." That same night, when the two hearts in love met, Leela and Travis worked things out between them and decided to get married as soon as Leela got a divorce. They didn't have long to wait for that. Mr. Marshall did everything so that Leela finally parted ways with her traitor husband. Rather than having a grand wedding, the couple opted for a modest ceremony at the registry office, surrounded by their closest friends and family. "I wish you nothing but joy in life, Leela," Mr. Marshall said, embracing the young woman. "Your father would approve of your choice. Travis is a worthy man." "Thank you," she replied. "We've also decided to open a small medical centre in the village. Currently, we don't even have a paramedic here, and the sick have to travel to town for medical services. Additionally, we want to establish an office for alternative medicine, with Evelyn in charge. However, it seems we'll need a special permit for that." "Don't worry, I'll handle all the paperwork," assured Mr. Marshall. Using your father's funds is the right thing to do." "Yes, I believe Dad would be okay with it," Leela said. While the construction of the medical centre was underway, Evelyn taught Leela all the wisdom she possessed. The elderly woman also left Leela an old book about herbals. This book was a family heirloom passed down through generations of women. It was a large, ancient manuscript, bound in red leather, which Leela diligently studied under Evelyn's guidance. Soon, Leela became well versed in herbs and their uses, and was able to identify the true cause of ailments. Travis's household now had 2 herbalists. It was only then that Leela realized why she had never completed her studies at the university. She had a different calling, to heal and save people. Her incredible talents were immediately recognized by Travis's grandmother. Evelyn passed away 2 weeks before the opening of the medical centre, peacefully in her sleep. Leela's grief was overwhelming, and for 3 days she couldn't eat or drink as preparations were made for the funeral. On the first night after the funeral, Leela dreamt of Evelyn. "Don't grieve, my granddaughter. This is just the start of another life for me, and you must continue my work. Take care of Travis and the miracle that awaits. I am leaving." "Grandma, please don't go," Leela cried out in her sleep. She was awakened by a frightened Travis. Leela shared her dream with him and cried out her sorrow, hoping to alleviate the pain of separation. By morning, Leela had regained her strength and resolve. She had a duty to fulfill Evelyn's instructions. A week later, the medical centre, named after Grandma Evelyn, was opened. Patients flooded in every day. The non-traditional medicine office, where Leela herself provided consultations, was particularly beloved by the locals. Not a single person left unsatisfied with her help. Travis supported his wife in every aspect of her work. However, there was one thing that still troubled Leela. She couldn't get pregnant. Her body seemed unable to let go of the past, despite following Evelyn's instructions faithfully. "Let go of your resentment," Evelyn had told her on numerous occasions. "Why do you still hold on to it? You must release the burden of those bitter memories. It's preventing you from becoming a mother." But Leela's heart still ached for Mike. "Leela! Travis!" People called her from outside the window. She quickly got dressed and went out into the yard. The coolness of the summer night greeted her. "What's going on?" Leela hurried to the crowd of fellow villagers. They parted, revealing an unconscious pregnant woman lying on a makeshift stretcher, her water having already broken. "Her car was parked on the side of the bypass road," said one of the locals. "I was driving from the farm and I saw a pregnant woman lying in the car. Her car wouldn't start, so I called for help. They brought the ambulance here, but it will take an hour and a half to arrive because the roads are muddy after the rain. Come on, Leela, do something, or the poor woman will die." Leela bent over the stranger and recoiled. It was Courtney, Mike's mistress. "No, she won't die. Bring her inside," Leela shouted. "Travis, go get the doctor from your brother's hospital. We have an emergency." Her husband jumped on his motorcycle and drove straight across the field. When they took Courtney to the medical centre, she woke up. When she saw Leela, she was frightened and cried. "Forgive me," she moaned in pain. "I'm so guilty before you." "God will forgive, and I've already forgiven you," Leela replied. "Now, let's focus on the labour. We're going to save your children. And tell me how you got here. Why were you wandering alone at night?" "Because I am alone," said the mistress. "Mike was put in jail for hiding taxes and committing fraud. I asked him to stop, not to be greedy, but he wouldn't listen. So they confiscated everything from him. And we never got married. I was left with nothing. What's going to happen now?" "Everything will be all right. Don't be afraid," Leela reassured Courtney. "The good doctor will come and everything will be all right." But the doctor arrived only 10 minutes after the medical centre had filled with the cries of newborn twins, a boy and a girl. The labour was natural and went well, despite minor complications. Leela was overjoyed. She held the babies in her arms in pride, while Courtney silently looked at them, her lips pressed together, as if this happiness had not happened to her. The doctor examined Courtney and concluded that her body was fine. Courtney was transferred to the ward, and the twins were taken away to be cleaned up and swaddled. "What are you going to name them?" asked Leela, addressing the new mother. "I don't know." Courtney shrugged and turned her back to the wall. "All right, sleep and rest," Leela said, and closed the door behind her, leaving pomegranate juice and porridge on the table for the young mother. Leela spent the whole night with the babies, trying not to wake Courtney, who needed sleep and strength, before feeding the children. When she brought the twins into the room, she gasped in surprise. Courtney had left, leaving a short note that read, "I give up the children. They are yours, Leela. I can't raise them alone without Mike, and I don't want to. I'm sorry. Goodbye." That's how Leela became a mother to Evelyn and Jaden. She and Travis decided to adopt them. 5 years passed. "Mum," little Evelyn approached Leela, "why do all my friends in kindergarten have younger brothers and sisters and we don't?" "Don't get upset, honey, because you will have two," Leela said and smiled. "Yay!" Evelyn shouted. "How will it happen?" asked a dazed Travis. "Just like this." Leela laughed and showed Travis the pregnancy test she had taken the day before.
Hola, suscríbete a Historias Vitales para no perderte nuevas historias. Mi esposa había estado trabajando en su proyecto especial durante 4 meses ahora. No era su proyecto personal, pero ella era la persona principal y responsable de su éxito. El proyecto estaba diseñado para salvar a su empresa, Bixler Enterprises. Los últimos 4 meses habían sido difíciles porque se vio obligada a trabajar duro. Era importante tanto para ella como para la empresa. Había una buena posibilidad de que Bixler Enterprises quebrara si el proyecto no se completaba. Sara tenía una licenciatura de Albrecht y un MBA de Wharton. Era la más inteligente de la familia. Yo empecé a trabajar como mecánico de autos justo después de la secundaria y después de 21 años seguía siendo mecánico de autos. No me importaba porque me gustaba el trabajo y pagaba bien. Era suficiente para pagar la universidad de Sara y criar a 2 hijos. No vivíamos lujosamente, pero estábamos bien. Los niños ya se habían mudado, y las cosas iban bastante bien con nuestros ingresos. Sara quedó embarazada 3 meses después de casarnos a la edad de 18 años. Durante los primeros años de nuestro matrimonio, vivimos con mis padres. Ellos tenían una gran casa vacía ya que 4 de mis hermanos se habían mudado. Eso significaba que teníamos una niñera mientras Sara completaba sus primeros años de universidad. Debido a 2 embarazos, la carrera de 4 años le llevó 6 años completarla. Fue difícil, pero lo logró. Siempre tuve trabajo y nunca me faltó trabajo extra si lo necesitaba. Después de que Sara se graduó de Wharton, alquilamos nuestro propio lugar. Tuvo ofertas de trabajo de varias empresas grandes, pero todas requerían que nos mudáramos. A mí no me importaba, pero Sara quería quedarse cerca de casa. Por eso decidió trabajar en Bixler Enterprises. Pagaba bien, pero lo más importante, le daba responsabilidad y la oportunidad de avanzar. Sara era una empleada trabajadora y dedicada. La presentación es el jueves en el Hotel Thyssen en Filadelfia. Tomé unos días libres en el trabajo para ayudarla según fuera necesario. Al final, todo lo que logré fue hacerle algo de comer cuando llegaba a casa. No sabía nada sobre su trabajo, ni tampoco quería saber, los negocios corporativos de alto nivel me aburrían. Empresarios de Europa, Asia y América del Sur venían aquí, la empresa pagaba sus boletos de avión y proporcionaba habitaciones en el Hotel Thyssen mientras estaban aquí. Era caro como el infierno, y por algunas cosas que Sara había dicho, la empresa estaba sobreestimando sus finanzas. Su presentación era importante para ella, para la empresa y para más de 200 empleados. Hasta el martes por la noche, todo iba bien. Sara llegó a casa con un traje nuevo, un traje gris con una blusa blanca. Desplegó todo lo que necesitaba en la cama de la habitación de invitados. Cuando se trataba de la limpieza de la casa, ella era normal, pero cuando se trataba del trabajo, era meticulosa. No entendía por qué necesitaba sacar su ropa interior de lujo, pero no dije nada. Además de su traje para la presentación, tenía varios vestidos de cóctel lindos para eventos sociales antes y después del evento. Siempre había evitado tales eventos, pero me sentía obligado a ir con ella si ella quería que lo hiciera. Me agradeció la oferta, pero dijo que no era necesario. Todos los materiales y equipos que necesitaba estaban guardados ordenadamente en el maletero de su Volvo. Antes de salir del trabajo, ella misma conducía el coche para asegurarse de que todo estuviera en perfectas condiciones. Tenía todo el día miércoles para prepararse y toda la noche del miércoles para socializar con sus invitados. Sara era tan buena en lo que hacía que sentía que habría sido mejor si simplemente me hubiera mantenido alejado de ella. Finalmente, había terminado. Lo había revisado y vuelto a revisar todo. Todo lo que necesitaba ahora era una ducha caliente y una buena noche de sueño. Supongo que mi error fue que empecé a revisar sus cosas después de que Sara comenzara a ducharse. Pensé que estaba ayudando, pero resultó ser lo contrario. Estaba moviendo cosas en la cama cuando un pequeño sobre blanco cayó del bolsillo lateral de su bolso de maquillaje. Una carta de una farmacia, pero no del tipo que solemos usar. Dentro había 10 pastillas. No tenía idea de qué era, Pren, y las instrucciones eran confusas. Si es necesario, tomar una pastilla y luego una segunda pastilla 12 horas después. Pensé que podría ser algo que ella había conseguido para la ansiedad o los nervios, pero las instrucciones no tenían sentido. La receta estaba escrita a su nombre el lunes. Volví a poner el sobre en su lugar mientras ella terminaba de ducharse. Decidí que quería saber más sobre Pren antes de contarle sobre ello. Por supuesto, si lo mencionaba, significaría que estaba revisando sus cosas. Odio los dilemas. Mientras Sara se preparaba para dormir, fui a nuestro ordenador doméstico y busqué. 10 minutos después, me uní a mi esposa bajo las sábanas. Pasé toda la noche despierto, preguntándome por qué mi esposa había recogido una receta para la píldora del día después, especialmente después de que me hicieran una vasectomía hace 10 años. A la mañana siguiente, me levanté temprano, pero no estaba descansado. Di un largo paseo, esperando que despejara mi mente. Me dirigí hacia casa con reticencia, temiendo lo que podría hacer o decir cuando llegara allí. Mi hijo Joe se unió a la Marina después de la escuela secundaria y estaba en su primer año en San Diego. Nuestra hija Gloria se casó con su amor de la infancia el año pasado y acababa de mudarse a Dallas. Eso dejaba solo a Sara y a mí. Echaba de menos a los niños, pero esperaba envejecer con mi esposa. Ella era la única mujer que me había interesado, y ahora todo estaba. Si Sara estaba teniendo una aventura, lo ocultaba bien. Por supuesto, nunca la vigilé. Nunca miré sus correos electrónicos o llamadas telefónicas. No tenía razones para hacerlo. No tenía forma de saber qué estaba haciendo en el trabajo o después del trabajo. Confiaba en ella completamente. Ion, ¿dónde demonios has estado? ¿Quieres huevos o algo? No, solo café. No me sentía con muchas ganas de hablar. ¿Qué pasa, cariño? Solo son 3 días. Puedes venir si quieres, pero te aburrirás como una ostra. No, realmente no quiero ir, pero odio dejarte sola. Me preocupo cuando no estás aquí. Es muy dulce, querido, pero estará bien. No voy a salir del hotel en todo este tiempo. Pasaré la mayor parte del día asegurándome de que la sala de conferencias esté lista, y esta noche tendré una agradable charla con nuestros posibles clientes. Mañana, probablemente ni siquiera tendré la oportunidad de ir al baño. Llegaré a casa lo más temprano posible el viernes, te prometo un gran fin de semana si sabes a lo que me refiero. Todo eso suena bien, pero no puedes culparme por preocuparme. Soy un mecánico de autos, y tengo una esposa hermosa y exitosa. A veces tengo la sensación de que estás menos interesada en mejorar nuestra situación familiar que en avanzar en tu carrera. Detente, maldita sea, Ion. Siempre he respetado lo que haces para ganarte la vida y nunca he insinuado lo contrario. Criaste a 2 grandes niños y me pusiste a través de la universidad. Eres un gran esposo, un gran padre y un buen proveedor, y nunca olvides eso. Terminé mi café mientras ella recogía la mesa. ¿Quieres que te llame? No, no es una buena idea. Tendré el móvil apagado, y voy a apagar el teléfono de la habitación por la noche para poder dormir. Te llamaré siempre que pueda. La ayudé a cargar el coche, era tan meticulosa con eso como con todo lo demás. Trabajando, le llevaría 3 horas llegar al Hotel Thyssen. Me quedé en el porche y la vi marcharse. No me molesté en preguntarle por las pastillas. Pasé el resto de la mañana en el porche. No recuerdo haberme preocupado tanto como ahora. Me sentía pequeño e insignificante. Me sentía fuera de mi liga. Era un tipo de pueblo con un trabajo mediocre y una esposa exitosa. Era una combinación equivocada. Debería haberlo notado antes. Me sentía estúpido. El mejor traje que tenía era una chaqueta azul y un par de pantalones. Al menos tenía algunas corbatas, aunque tenían 10 años de antigüedad. Acababa de terminar de vestirme cuando sonó el teléfono fijo. Oye, cariño, solo quería avisarte de que llegué bien. ¿Tuviste un buen viaje? Supongo que el tráfico no estaba demasiado denso. Estuvo bien. Te llamaré esta noche. Ahora tengo que irme. Estoy en la habitación 714, Sara. Puedo estar en casa de mis padres o en la de mis hermanos esta noche si quieres llamarme a mi móvil. De acuerdo. Suena el teléfono móvil. Te quiero, tengo que irme. Me tomé mi tiempo para llegar a Filadelfia. No fui directo al Thyssen, primero me detuve y compré un filete con queso. Prometí hacer una larga noche. No estaba seguro de qué iba a hacer. Estacioné en el garaje del hotel y simplemente esperé. Tarde o temprano, tenía que entrar en el hotel. Simplemente no podía decidir cuándo hacerlo. El sonido de mi teléfono celular me ayudó a tomar mi decisión. Ion, solo quería avisarte de que todo se ha arreglado. Ahora voy a bajar para encontrarme con algunas personas y cenar. No olvidaste nada, ¿verdad? No, todo está bien. Tengo todo en mi habitación para mañana. ¿Necesitas algo? No, Ion, relájate. Voy a apagar mi teléfono. Te llamaré mañana por la mañana. ¿De acuerdo? Ríe, diviértete. No es divertido, Ion, es trabajo. No parecía estar demasiado fuera de lugar. El vestíbulo, el restaurante y las salas de conferencias estaban llenos de gente, así que pude pasar desapercibido. Había un folleto pequeño y bonito que mostraba el diseño de todas las habitaciones del hotel. Me paseé por las diferentes habitaciones y me detuve en las paredes, mirando alrededor entre la multitud. No tenía ni idea de qué haría si Sara me veía. Lo averiguaría si y cuando eso sucediera. Encontré un tablero de eventos que enumeraba todas las habitaciones que estaban siendo utilizadas por los diversos grupos. Bixler Enterprises no tenía habitaciones disponibles para el miércoles por la noche. Esto me pareció interesante. Sara había dicho que no iba a salir del hotel, pero ahora no estaba tan seguro de eso. Había 3 comedores, familiar, informal y de alta cocina. A Sara no le gustaba mucho cenar con niños, así que fui primero al comedor informal. Solo me llevó 5 minutos asegurarme de que no estaba allí. Tuve mejor suerte en el salón gourmet, era una acogedora mesita encajada en la esquina, el tipo de mesa que la gente reserva para tener un encuentro privado. Sara llevaba un vestido de cóctel negro con un escote pronunciado y perlas, se veía elegante y su acompañante parecía apreciarlo. Conocía a algunas personas con las que trabajaba Sara y él no era una de ellas. Me resultaba familiar, pero no había forma de que pudiera recordarlo. Había muchas sillas libres, así que no tuve problemas para cruzar la sala. Había velas y pequeños candelabros de cristal en las mesas. Apagué la mía y le dije al camarero que me molestaba por el glaucoma. Pedí el plato de pollo de siempre y me acomodé. El camarero me sirvió el café por tercera vez. Disculpe, el tipo en la mesa de enfrente me parece muy familiar. ¿Sabes quién es? Sí, ese es Malcolm Eugene Foote. Es miembro del Consejo Municipal, se espera que se postule para el Congreso en los próximos años. ¿Es esa su esposa con él? Es muy bonita. No, esta es la primera vez que la veo. Siempre usa esa mesa para señoras especiales, si me entiende. Simplemente le sonreí y pedí la cuenta. Nunca había visto a Sara tan sensual con un hombre antes. Parecía captar cada palabra que decía, como si fuera Dios o algo así. No estaban haciendo nada inapropiado, pero tampoco era platónico ni profesional. Cuando me fui, estaban terminando su segunda botella de vino. Ahora entendía por qué se había llevado su lencería elegante. Me acomodé en una esquina del vestíbulo para que no me vieran. 10 minutos después, salieron del restaurante. Ella le tomaba la mano mientras caminaban por el vestíbulo hacia el ascensor. Observé cuidadosamente los indicadores de piso. Que el ascensor se detuviera en el tercer piso era una buena señal, significaba que no lo había llevado a su habitación. Era una mala señal cuando el ascensor no llegaba al séptimo piso, significaba que ella fue a su habitación. Por si acaso me equivocaba en algo, me senté en el vestíbulo y observé el ascensor durante 1 hora. La gente entraba y salía, pero Sara no estaba entre ellos. Saqué mi maleta vacía del coche y me dirigí al mostrador de recepción. Aunque podía demostrar que era su esposo, me costó trabajo conseguir una tarjeta llave. Se dieron después de llamar a la habitación, pero nadie respondió. Finalmente, estaba en camino a la habitación 714 con la tarjeta llave. Ni siquiera encendí las luces al principio, simplemente me senté en la oscuridad de la habitación durante más de 1 hora. No fue difícil asegurarme de que no regresara a la habitación. Primero, empacé todas sus ropas y pertenencias personales. No dejé nada atrás. Revisé el paquete de Preven, todavía quedaban 10 pastillas en el tocador. De manera muy ordenada, estaban todos los artículos que necesitaría para su presentación al día siguiente. Comencé a llenar la maleta. Había 24 carpetas promocionales especialmente encuadernadas y otras 20 carpetas regulares, todas ellas fueron a la maleta. Un proyector digital fue lo siguiente, seguido de una computadora portátil. Tomé su bolso y su celular, que había dejado en la habitación. Todo lo que tenía consigo era un bolso de mano y probablemente un tubo de lápiz labial. Di una vuelta por la habitación tan cuidadosamente como lo hizo ella para asegurarme de no perder nada. Una vez satisfecho, dejé las llaves del coche y mi anillo de bodas en el tocador. Aparte de esos 2 objetos, la habitación estaba completamente vacía. El ascensor se dirigió directamente al estacionamiento, no tuve problemas para llevar 2 maletas, y 20 minutos después, estaba en la autopista rumbo al norte. Pasaban las 3 de la madrugada, no tenía idea de que había pasado tanto tiempo. 1 hora o 2 después, sonó mi teléfono celular, la identificación de llamadas mostraba el número del Listen. ¿Ion? Sí, ¿dónde estás? Estaré en casa pronto. Eso fue todo lo que dije. Hubo silencio en el otro extremo de la línea. Los vendedores tienen un viejo dicho, el primero que habla pierde. Pareció una eternidad antes de que ella hablara. Ion, lo siento. No preguntó nada y simplemente colgó. Apagué mi teléfono, era obvio que había regresado a su habitación. Más tarde ese día, Tenía que dar una presentación que salvaría a su empresa y le daría un ascenso. Metí las maletas en el desván del garaje. Sara nunca iba allí y nunca pensó en buscar algo allí. Por supuesto, en este punto, estoy bastante seguro de que no importaba. Primero, recogí todas mis ropas y pertenencias personales. La mayoría de los hombres tienen sus propias herramientas, generalmente es un requisito para el trabajo. Pasé por la tienda, cargué las mías en el Subaru y recogí mi último cheque de pago. Para entonces, los bancos ya estaban abiertos, no tuve que hacer ninguna manipulación financiera complicada. Simplemente retiré todo el dinero de mis cuentas. Almorcé en Hagerstown, Maryland. Tenía suficiente dinero para vivir durante unos años, pero sabía que estaría buscando trabajo muy pronto. Sara y yo éramos parecidos en eso de que a ambos nos encantaba trabajar. La voy a extrañar. Pasé un par de horas en las cuevas del Luray y alquilé una habitación cerca de Whitewell. No tenía idea de qué iba a hacer. Era sábado, y me encontré sentado en el acuario de Chattanooga, observando la naturaleza que nunca había visto antes. Pasé unas horas simplemente relajándome y decidí que era un buen lugar para estar. Compré un pase anual para el acuario y, para la hora de la cena, tenía un lugar donde quedarme. Era un remolque móvil en el parque, pero estaba amueblado y era económico. No necesitaba mucho. La primera cosa que haría el lunes por la mañana sería conseguir un trabajo. Un buen hombre de mantenimiento siempre puede conseguir un trabajo, especialmente si está dispuesto a trabajar duro. Podría permanecer discreto hasta que fuera el momento de renovar mi licencia de conducir o las etiquetas del coche. Me preocuparé por eso cuando llegue el momento. El domingo por la tarde, llamé a Gloria. Me sentí obligado a informarle sobre lo que estaba sucediendo, pero Sara ya se lo había contado. Fue bastante franca con Gloria sobre lo que había pasado. Dijo que había engañado, que la sorprendí, que me fui y que ella perdió su trabajo. Me sentí mal porque ella perdió su trabajo, pero ese era el precio que tenía que pagar. Le pedí a Gloria que le dijera a Josh lo que estaba sucediendo la próxima vez que hablara con él. También le dije que la llamaría aproximadamente una vez al mes para verificar cómo iban las cosas. No le dije dónde estaba. Para el mediodía del día siguiente, tenía un trabajo. En realidad, estaba a poca distancia del parque de remolques, con el Waffle House a mitad de camino. ¿Qué más podría querer un hombre? No sé cómo manejaron el papeleo, pero me estaban pagando $20 por hora sin hacer preguntas. Estaba feliz, y ellos también. Ni siquiera tendría que tocar el dinero que traje conmigo. Unos 2 meses después, Gloria me informó que Sara se había mudado de la casa y estaba viviendo con sus padres. Gloria no sabía nada más, pero estaba feliz de que estuviera estable y le estuviera yendo bien. Josh me llamó desde San Diego solo para informarme que iba a hacer un crucero. Era técnico en aviónica en un portaaviones. Intentó explicar qué hacía exactamente, pero estaba más allá de mi comprensión. Nunca supe mucho sobre cosas técnicas. Ambos tuvieron cuidado de no decir nada malo sobre su madre. Aprecié eso. Después de eso, todo siguió como siempre. Comencé a hablar con Gloria al menos semanalmente. Josh y yo comenzamos a enviar correos electrónicos regularmente. Gloria hablaba regularmente con Sara, pero decía muy poco sobre lo que estaba haciendo o dónde estaba. Nunca presenté la solicitud de divorcio, y parece que Sara tampoco lo hizo. Tengo una licencia de conducir de Tennessee y las etiquetas en el Subaru. Comencé a frecuentar un bar local un par de veces al mes y tuve encuentros casuales. 2 mujeres se alternaban como mis compañeras nocturnas regulares. No buscaban compromisos, y yo tampoco. Parecía funcionar bien para todos nosotros. La vida era buena. Eso fue hace mucho tiempo, y gradualmente olvidé a Sara. Con el tiempo, el Subaru comenzó a darme problemas. Había olvidado cuánto tiempo había pasado. Tenía más de 200,000 millas. Estaba reflexionando sobre esto con una jarra de cerveza un día cuando me di cuenta de que habían pasado casi 5 años desde que me fui de casa. Mantuve un contacto cercano con ambos hijos. Gloria ya tenía 2 hijos propios en este momento y quería que los visitara. Josh casi se casó con una mujer tailandesa, pero en el último momento se negó. Por lo general, trabajaba 6 días a la semana y usaba el domingo para recuperarme del sábado por la noche. No había ninguna buena razón para que alguien llamara a la puerta de mi remolque a las 6 de la mañana de un viernes. Su grosería fue recompensada por un hombre medio desnudo abriendo la puerta. Los calzoncillos del día son repugnantes, y la dama en la puerta, juzgando por la expresión en su rostro, estuvo de acuerdo conmigo. Ella apartó la mirada, pero su compañero no parecía impresionado. Norm habría usado pantalones, pero en un momento como este, los invitados me molestaron. Estamos buscando a John Terrell. No los conozco. Me llamo David Simmons, y esta es mi esposa Mara. Tenemos un problema y esperamos que nos puedas ayudar. Lo siento mucho, no trabajo a altas horas de la noche. Si necesitan algo relacionado con su auto, tendrán que ir a la tienda. Esto provocó varias miradas en blanco y finalmente una respuesta. No tiene nada que ver con tu trabajo, es más un problema personal. ¿Podemos entrar? El interior del remolque lucía desordenado, rara vez tenía invitados, así que rara vez lo limpiaba. Incluso mis novias insistían en que fuéramos a su lugar. Hagan como en su casa, déjenme ponerme los pantalones enseguida. Al entrar en el dormitorio, dejé la puerta abierta solo para mostrarles lo hospitalario que soy. También me puse una camisa. ¿Les gustaría tomar café? Solo tomará unos 10 minutos. Aparté algunas cosas del sofá para que pudieran sentarse. No hubo respuesta a la pregunta del café. Tenemos una hija adoptiva de 4 años y otra de 2 que necesita un trasplante de médula ósea, y esperamos que nos puedas ayudar. Estamos dispuestos a pagarte si es necesario. ¿Con mi médula ósea? No, queremos usarla y estamos dispuestos a compensarte por cualquier inconveniente. Creo que quieren comprarla. Estaba actuando como un listillo, y de repente me di cuenta de ello. Estas personas eran serias, tenían un problema real y estaban buscando ayuda. Lo siento mucho, no quise interrumpir. Por favor, continúen. Nuestra mejor oportunidad de encontrar un donante es un familiar cercano. Eres nuestra mejor esperanza. Mira esto. No quiero ser un grosero, pero creo que se equivocaron de persona. ¿Cuándo nació su hija? Cumplirá 5 años en julio. Marche Simmons habló por primera vez, y sonó sincera. Odio ser el portador de malas noticias, pero me hice una vasectomía hace 15 años. No hay forma de que pueda ser su padre. ¿Por qué tu nombre estaba en el certificado de nacimiento? No puedo responder eso, tal vez deberían preguntarle a su madre. Esa afirmación fue recibida con silencio. Sentí pena por estas personas, pero no sabía cómo ayudarles. ¿Cuál es el nombre de la madre? Sarah Lise Terrell. No encontraba las palabras. Tal vez no debería haber tomado esas malditas pastillas de ella, por supuesto, entonces esas personas no tendrían una hija en absoluto. Todo lo que pensaba que había superado el dolor, y aquí está de nuevo, viejos recuerdos de mi esposa teniendo relaciones sexuales con ese maldito político de Filadelfia. Estaba empezando a olvidarlo todo, y ahora estaba de vuelta. Maldita sea. Ahora entiendo y pido disculpas por mi grosería e insensibilidad. Haré todo lo que esté en mi poder para ayudarles. En primer lugar, porque no puede Sara hacerse un trasplante de médula ósea. Médicamente, no puede. ¿Por qué no? Es madre, tiene que ser una donante adecuada. Ella es una donante adecuada, pero está demasiado enferma. Los médicos se negaron siquiera a considerar utilizarla. ¿Enferma de qué? Está muriendo de insuficiencia hepática. Le quedan menos de 6 meses de vida. Esto no tiene sentido. Siempre ha estado perfectamente sana. Además, no creo que un hígado enfermo le impida donar médula ósea. El hospital no aceptará su firma en el formulario de consentimiento. ¿Estás diciendo que hay algo mal en su cabeza? Ambos me miraron en silencio, sabían la respuesta, pero no querían decirlo. En ese momento, no quería que se sintieran aún más incómodos. Hace 10 minutos, no me importaban, pero ahora sentía que tenía que protegerlos y ayudarlos. ¿Cómo sucedió esto? ¿Podría alguno de mis hijos ayudar? Quizás, pero pensamos que eras nuestra mejor esperanza. ¿Por qué no van tras su padre, su verdadero padre? Pensamos que eras tú. No tenemos ni idea de quién más podría ser. Sara no nos dijo nada sobre otro posible padre. De hecho, ella no estaba en condiciones de explicar nada, agregó Mara. Obtuvimos la mayoría de nuestra información de la agencia de adopción. Tuve que preparar café y hacer pis, permítanme un momento. Dejé a mis invitados sentados mientras preparaba el café. Solo tomó unos minutos. Mientras se preparaba, fui al baño, algo que necesitaba hacer urgentemente. Traté de ser discreto, ya había avergonzado lo suficiente a Mara. ¿Dónde viven? En Westchester, Pensilvania. Les haré una oferta. Si les digo quién es el verdadero padre de su hija, deben prometerme que lo perseguirán sin descanso hasta obtener lo que desean. ¿De qué estás hablando? El padre de su hija es un político prominente en Pensilvania. Por supuesto, negará todo y probablemente les proporcionará documentos legales para detener sus esfuerzos. Si acuerdan presionar lo suficiente para que él admita que la niña es suya, podrán avergonzarlo y obligarlo a hacerse un trasplante de médula ósea. Eso es lo que quieren, ¿verdad? Sí, claro, pero ¿cómo hacemos eso? No lo sé. Soy mecánico. Trabajo con metal para ganarme la vida. Creo que la mejor manera sería utilizar la televisión, la radio y los periódicos. Los políticos harán cualquier cosa para evitar una mala publicidad. ¿Tienen amigos que puedan ayudar? Bueno, ahora ambos estaban sonriendo. Debo haber dicho algo que les dio esperanza. Creo que podemos hacer esto. ¿Quién demonios es él? Malcolm Eugene Foote. Se postula para el Senado de los Estados Unidos. Apuesto a que hará cualquier cosa para evitar una mala publicidad. El café estaba listo, pero David y Marchen no podían esperar para llegar a casa. Antes de irse, les dije cómo ponerse en contacto con Gloria y Joss en caso de que los necesitaran. Estaba seguro de que ayudarían. También les pedí que me dijeran dónde estaba Sara. Probablemente estaría en Pensacola antes de que ellos regresaran a Westchester. Me corté el pelo y compré una camisa nueva. Sara era una tramposa que arruinó mi vida, pero aún así quería lucir bien cuando la viera. Era otro remolque, pero esta vez era un bonito doble nuevo. Allí estaba su Volvo con una llanta desinflada y un parabrisas roto. La mujer que abrió la puerta no era Sara, parecía que la habían empapado fuerte y la habían dejado empapada. Tenía al menos 45, tal vez 50, y debió haber tenido una vida difícil. La falta de maquillaje no ayudaba, y simplemente se veía horrible. No tuve la oportunidad de abrir la boca. Caray, si no es John Terrell. Nunca esperé verte aquí. Tuve que usar la vieja línea, me estás poniendo en desventaja. Sherry Hart. Pasa, entra. ¿Quieres una cerveza? No, pero gracias. Estoy aquí para ver a Sara. Sherry cruzó la habitación y se detuvo en el buffet del comedor. Aquí está, John. Mírala todo lo que quieras. Su mano señalaba una urna de latón que estaba en el centro del buffet vacío. Supongo que llegué demasiado tarde. No me moví, solo me quedé mirando el contenedor frente a mí. ¿Puedo tomar una cerveza ahora? Sara se mudó a Pensacola después de dar a su bebé en adopción. Compró el remolque con el dinero que recibió de Bixler Enterprises después de que la despidieron. Tenía una participación en las ganancias, 401k, y vacaciones y días de enfermedad. Eventualmente, consiguió un trabajo en una fábrica local de prendas de vestir donde trabajaba en el departamento de envíos. Allí fue donde conoció a Sherry. Sherry alquilaba una habitación de Sarah. Cada centavo que Sarah ganaba iba para el alcohol. Empezó con vino y gradualmente pasó a bebidas más fuertes, las más baratas. Eventualmente, perdió su trabajo debido a su alcoholismo y se vio obligada a usar sus ahorros. Nunca salió con nadie ni salió a ningún lado. Sherry se quedó con ella, pagó sus servicios públicos y compró alimentos que Sarah no comía. Le llevó más de 3 años quitarse la vida. Increíblemente, ella tenía un testamento y me dejó un doble remolque y un Volvo. Sherry explicó que Sarah estaba tan angustiada por lo que había hecho que simplemente se rindió. No intentó evitar el embarazo ni siquiera terminarlo. La adopción se había arreglado meses antes de que naciera el bebé. Nunca volvió a trabajar, excepto en los trabajos clandestinos que hacía mal. Sherry dijo que Sarah no parecía tener ambición ni propósito en la vida. Sarah hablaba mucho de mí pero tenía miedo de intentar contactarme. Gloria le dio mi número, pero nunca me llamó. Era como si su aventura de una noche la hubiera lastimado más a ella que a mí. Estuve allí durante 2 semanas y luego vendí el remolque de Sherry por $1 y obtuve $3,000 por el Volvo. 2 días después, estaba en Westchester visitando a mis nuevos amigos David y Marche. Malcolm Eugene Foot resistió al principio, pero David y Marche lo presionaron hasta que cedió. Insistió en pruebas de ADN, que demostraron que era el padre. Para salvar la cara, más o menos lo obligaron a someterse a un trasplante de médula ósea, que fue exitoso. La carrera política y la vida familiar de Malcolm no dejaron una impresión favorable. Su caída en las encuestas fue tan rápida que el partido lo reemplazó por otro candidato unos meses antes de las elecciones. Su esposa solicitó el divorcio y fue muy pública al respecto. Sarah y yo estamos viajando ahora a Dallas para ver a Gloria y a mis nietos. No sé cuánto tiempo mantendré a Sarah conmigo, probablemente hasta que tenga a alguien.